My first claim is it is undeniable that reparations are just and necessary. Ooh, I knew I was going to be surrounded by ignorance, but damn.
Rude, loud, condescending, but most importantly, flat out wrong. Amanda Seales had a debate with 20 black conservatives that went viral for all the wrong reasons. The left thought she won. The right knows she lost. I address how Amanda Seales got destroyed on the next Rob Lett Show.
Why are you here? What do you want? Just think about that right now. Do you need a network of the right connections? Maybe you need a mentor to hold you accountable.
We want you to welcome your instructor and our friend, Rob Lett.
Please put your hands together for Rob Lett.
Ladies and gentlemen, bring to the stage, on your feet, Rob Lett!
Welcome to the Rob Lett Show. I'm your host, Rob Lett. A couple months ago, a social media influencer named Amanda Seales appeared on a show called Surrounded. It's a show where typically one person has some viewpoints and they're surrounded by 20 people who disagree with them. The show doesn't have a moderator. You, as the viewer, determine on your own who won the debate. On this particular episode, Amanda, who describes herself as a black radical, was surrounded by 20 black conservatives, and the episode went viral. Depending on what side you fell on, I imagine people on the left probably thought they won. I know people on the right thought we won. So today we're going to discuss how to determine what constitutes a loss, why black Democrats and black conservatives disagree, and the irony of black Democrats. One story, one show. Let's do it. You know what time it is.
What time is it?
It's time for the Rob Lett Show. If you've never watched the show Surrounded, the premise is one person comes on the show and this person is the central focus. They typically make a few claims that they have to defend. They're defending these claims against 20 people who are surrounding them, hence the show's title, Surrounded. The central person, Amanda Seales in this case, debates whichever individual can reach their chair in front of her the fastest once a buzzer rings. If the remaining onlookers don't like the job that you're doing, they can raise a flag that's been given to them. When the majority of them vote you out, they can replace you with another person. Even though there were 20 conservatives in this episode, Amanda debated 12 conservatives about 4 claims that she felt to be true. Here are the 4 claims Amanda believed to be true. 1. It's undeniable that reparations are just and necessary. 2. Black on black crime is the result of underinvestment and over-policing. 3. Systemic racism isn't a theory. It's our lived reality backed by data and history. 4. Black conservatism fails to address the needs of the working class. I said at the outset that depending on what side of the fence you fell on, some thought she won the debate and some thought she lost. Let me tell you why this assessment is going to be different than most people, because I took the time to predetermine what constitutes a loss. First of all, Amanda Seales chose all these claims herself, so the onus is on her to have really good arguments proving her point. If she can't prove them beyond doubt, she lost whatever claim she's trying to defend. Let's take her first claim about reparations, for instance. It's her claim that it's undeniable that reparations are just and necessary. Well, in order to prove her wrong, one only needs to prove one of 2 points, or both. They'd have to prove either reparations are not fair, just, or reparations are not necessary, in order for her claim to be deemed invalid. Remember those 2 criteria. Fair and necessary. The first conservative to debate her is Anthony Brian Logan. Some call him ABL. He's a popular YouTuber whom I've met once in Atlanta at a Trump rally. Anthony immediately hits her with a question as well as a point. His question is, who's going to get reparations and why would they get it? This question is really striking to the heart of Amanda's claim that reparations are just. Anthony's trying to see if she's expecting people to receive reparations whose family weren't even slaves. Did Amanda ever answer this? No. No, she didn't. She didn't answer who was going to receive it. She didn't answer who was going to pay it, nor an estimate of what something like this might even cost. Since she used the Jews and Japanese as a barometer of reparations for other ethnicities, you'd think she might at least touch on one of these, but she did not. She didn't prove it was just, at least not when talking to ABL. The next item Anthony addressed was that reparations weren't going to help the situation. This strikes to the heart of her reparations is necessary claim. He pointed out that Baltimore spends $18,272 per pupil, and only 16% of their 8th graders read at or above national standards. With 4th graders, the results are even worse. It's 14%. These are stats that were backed up by Straight Arrow News, which is the fact checker that displays while the debaters are conversing. Anthony's point here is if nearly $20,000 per person isn't making a difference, why do you think reparations will? Did Amanda ever answer this? Did she answer this effectively? She answered him, but she didn't answer it effectively. She responded by saying the so-called racist education system of $18,000 per pupil won't make a difference because of the so-called racist police department, over-policing in the neighborhood, and on and on and on. Notice the strategy here is if there's anything that she can't really answer, she responds to it with more racism in other places, of course. So without her realizing it, she's indirectly saying she doesn't even know how much money would be helpful because there's so much racism coming from other places like the police department, the mortgage industry, and property taxes, etc. It's all a fancy way of saying you just don't know what would make a difference. If you don't really know what would make a difference, how can your first claim be that reparations are necessary? I mean, you believe it would somehow make a difference. The answer is you can't make that kind of claim. Amanda lost this debate to her very first opponent. The only leg she had to potentially stand on was the fact that reparations have been paid before to other groups. She called that a moral duty for America to pay reparations, but she couldn't even prove the moral duty because moral falls under the category of just and fair. We already covered how she failed to prove that paying reparations were fair, but there's something else too. Words have meaning. While she was talking, look at the definition of reparations provided by Straight Arrow News on the show. Do you see that last definition? It says reparations are accomplished by paying money to or otherwise helping those who have been wronged. You mean to tell me there's a form of reparations that doesn't include paying money? You don't say. Perhaps that's what conservatives are trying to tell her, but she's just not listening. When I was analyzing this debate, I had to decide how I was going to handle this. Was I going to go through every single conversation that she had with 12 conservatives, or was I just going to focus on where she fell short and lost the debate? The original debate was already an hour and 30 minutes, so I'm not going to rehash every conversation. I'm just here to hit the highlights people overlooked to determine whether or not she proved her claims. With ABL, she didn't prove her claims on reparations being just and fair. Next up was a young guy named Matt Nuclear. I assume that's a show name, but I don't know. She debates this same reparations claim with 4 conservatives in total: ABL, Matt Nuclear, Jordan, and Keisha. Remember, Amanda's already failed once. Matt comes right out of the gate telling Amanda he doesn't believe reparations are necessary. Necessary is, again, one of the key components to Amanda's claim. If there's any clip that I keep seeing going around with Amanda that's pretending she won the debate, it's her interaction with Matt Nuclear, the youngest opponent in this entire debate. We'll come back to this. As Matt's evidence that reparations are unnecessary, he mentions the Chinese Exclusion Act of 1882 that banned the Chinese from entering America. They were effectively put under apartheid here in the United States, yet they have the highest median income. He asks Amanda to explain this story. Amanda doesn't respond by addressing the success of the Chinese and what they did to become successful. She instead tells Matt that he's been lied to and that his data is wrong because she doesn't agree with it. Keep in mind, Jubilee's own fact checker is confirming Matt's findings on the screen while they're talking. This isn't an answer, it's a deflection because she doesn't like the data. She then tries a sorry attempt at saying the situation with the Chinese is a false equivalency because they came here willingly versus blacks being brought here. It's a non sequitur. How we got here doesn't get to the heart of what conservatives are asking her. Is there anything blacks can do to achieve the same success without reparations is what Matt is asking, but she has no answer. She couldn't prove why blacks can't duplicate the success on our own, so she pivots to something else, the claim of systemic racism. This is the part I mentioned earlier that leftists try to milk. Amanda brings up redlining as her proof of systemic racism. Should Matt have known what redlining is? Sure, but don't celebrate just yet. She's 44 years old, and he's 18 years old. It's not surprising to me that the youngest conservatives in the room missed the conversation about mortgages. But don't beat your chest on that one quite yet, because you still lost. You took a loss by not refuting his point that reparations were necessary. She's just trying another angle. The angle isn't to prove that reparations are necessary. By bringing up redlining, she's now trying to prove that racism was systemic. This is slightly different from her initial claim of being fair and necessary reparations. This is where I'll interject here. In the context of systemic racism, Amanda tells Matt that redlining does exist, as in right now, even though Jubilee's own fact checker shows the practice of color maps being outlawed in 1968, and we're in 2025. Let's take a second to acknowledge that words have meaning. The word systemic is synonymous with whole, complete, thorough. Are we really going to argue that blacks don't get mortgages today? Because that would be systemic. Or are we saying that there are areas of town that are more risky than others? True story. My wife and I use the same company twice to both install and repair our garage door. The owner is a white guy. We've never had an issue with his service, and he's never had an issue receiving payment. Now, my mother-in-law, she lives on a different side of town. She's heard my wife rave about the guy's work, and so we tried to refer him to my mother-in-law. He told us he doesn't go on that side of town. Every time he goes, he gets his truck broken into, and the equipment is stolen while he's trying to work. Is he racist? Obviously not systemically or otherwise, but he has made a determination about the risk of the area. Similarly, slavery was not thoroughly throughout America. It was not complete. It was not the whole of America. Slavery existed in various parts all over the world, so by its very nature, it existed in some parts of the country, the operative word being some parts. Our Constitution didn't make slavery explicitly legal, and we hadn't added language to make it explicitly illegal. Our original language acknowledged it existed and therefore neither abolished nor condoned it, so it was therefore found in some states and not others. I've said a mouthful here, but I'm merely pointing out that even the new diversion of systemic racism that she's pivoting to is also incorrect. It's meant to rile up emotion, and it's not even true. If my words right now aren't persuasive enough, it's worth noting that when Amanda goes on this diatribe to tell Matt that prisons are literally built based on test scores of students in third grade, Jubilee's own fact checker displays a graphic letting the viewer know this is also not true, and it's been debunked. She tries to land the plane again on her original claim by telling Matt that black people built this country and the country continues to thrive off the labor black people put into this country. If there was ever a statement that told on her, it was this one. When she was debating ABL, she took the time to declare that she was not a Democrat, but a black radical. However, this statement of hers where she said we should be paid because the country continues to thrive off the work we did is synonymous with the ideology of socialism and owning the means of production. This is a fancy way of me telling you she's trying to land this plane, but the plane is crashing again. She doesn't want to be seen as a leftist, but if you let her talk long enough, it tells on her. She is a leftist, and as ABL implied, the Democrat Party is the party that currently best suits her vision. This should be obvious even to the casual observer, since it's always Democrats proposing reparations and not conservatives. I brought this up because her third opponent is Jordan, and perhaps for the second time, she denies being a Democrat. She denies being a liberal. I can only think of one instance where she'd technically be correct, and it's the technical definition of liberal, but I suspect she's not referring to that instance. She's trying to rebrand her ideology as something new when it's actually old, tried, and failed. Jordan starts off their conversation by confronting the fair and just part of her claim. He addresses the fact that there are Americans who never had slaves. In addition to that, there were some blacks who did have slaves. Jubilee's own fact checker confirms this fact as Jordan is talking to her. Jordan is challenging her claim that reparations are fair. Amanda's response is horrible. She said Jordan's more focused on preserving the fairness of those who didn't have slaves as opposed to the fairness of those who are descendants of slaves, which again makes her wrong. He never made that claim of preference at all. He simply said that there were some whites who didn't have slaves and some blacks who did, and he asked her to explain why it's fair. She ducked this question too and pivoted to Harriet Tubman. And how people could think that Amanda Seales won this debate is comical to me. She either ducked questions or flat out wrong based on the show's own fact checkers. She doesn't even know where she is on the political spectrum. She eventually resorted to just calling him ignorant. Name calling is usually what happens when a person lacks the ability to make an intellectual argument. It's the second time she referred to the audience as ignorant, even though she hasn't even proven her first claim yet. Amanda's fourth opponent was Keisha. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. She spelled it Kytia. Keisha starts out by asking for clarity from Amanda. She wants a 50,000-foot view of what Amanda believes would help. Amanda responds by explaining reparations and something called remunerations. Amanda explains that blacks are due both reparations and remunerations. She says reparations are repair for damages based on harm. She says remunerations is a monetary response to work that has not been paid for. The example she gives is one of a contractor who does work on your house, and if you don't pay them, they could take you to court and get remunerations for the work you've done. She mentions the intellectual property that was stolen from slaves as an example. I'm obviously chomping at the bit to jump in here, but I really wanted to get through her first wave of opponents. Keisha didn't really debate Amanda. She honestly shouldn't even be counted among the 12 conservatives that Amanda debated, because all Keisha did was allow Amanda to talk for 2 straight minutes, almost uninterrupted. That's not a debate. She just let Amanda have the floor. So really, Amanda debated 11 conservatives. Keisha didn't lose against Amanda here. She was trying to be so polite that she never got to speak herself. There's a subtle lesson in that too, if you can read between the lines of how men handle conflict versus how women handle it. It's important to take notice at this juncture. Amanda has spoken to 4 conservatives defending this reparations claim, but she lost long time ago. Most of this has been Jubilee just allowing her to debate different conservatives, but in the bigger picture, her claim about reparations being just and necessary was debunked. She lost. I had one of my friends text me and said that I should have been on the show. I appreciate the compliment, so let me weigh in on everything that was said on this first claim. Before I jump into my 2 cents, I need to mention something that's going to be very important to this conversation. It doesn't get discussed enough. Too many people on both the left and right seem to avoid the conversation about the political spectrum. If you've never seen the political spectrum, it's the spectrum that helps you to visualize the parties from left to right. I've seen a lot of charts try to explain this, but most of the ones that I've seen haven't been honest. The truth is, the difference between Democrats and Republicans is Democrats are by and large the government party. The more government proposals you hear, the more you know you're talking to a leftist. The less government you hear, chances are that person is more conservative. They believe in relying more on the individual, not some third party to help them. So let's be clear. When we're talking about left and right politics, a person who takes less government to the extremes would be an anarchist. They don't want any government at all. Most conservatives I know are not that extreme. And we know we need some structure, but that's what you get if you carried it all the way out to the right. No structure at all. The opposite of that are Democrats who want the government to control every darn thing you do. The extreme of having virtually no freedom is fascism or communism. A person who sits in the middle of our country is called a centrist or a moderate. To the left of centrist is Democrat and socialist, respectively, and to the right of being moderate is a Republican and libertarian, respectively. Why am I bringing up the political spectrum in this debate when it wasn't even mentioned on the show? Because it's necessary for you to see how deluded Amanda Seales actually is. At one point during the debate, she tells ABL that she's not a Democrat, she's a black radical. Well, what the hell does that mean? Is she for no government at all? Heck no. She's asking for government to step up and pay reparations. She's not even a Republican because she's there to debate all the Republicans and call them ignorant. She's trying to disown being a Democrat, but that's only because she's further left than that. She's more like the AOCs and the Ilhan Omars. They're in the Democrat Party because that's the only place that they would somehow have a home. Nobody on the right would ever take them. So make no mistake, Amanda may not be calling herself a Democrat, but she is a leftist. Don't let that black radical title fool you. As I pointed out, other things she said gave you clues of her philosophy, and she kept doubling down on them. So I wanted you to use the chart as you listen to her, and you'd see how she's confused on more than just her claim. As I mentioned at the outset of this, Amanda made a total of 4 claims. She lost the first one, and she has 3 more left to defend. For purposes of time, I don't want to go through the response of every conservative to all those remaining claims, or we'll be here for a while. The main purpose of this entire episode is to show you how most of the leftists claiming that she won never used a barometer to determine what a loss would look like in the first place. Now that I've proved my point with her first claim, all I really wanted to do with her remaining claims is to ask, did she prove it or not? Her second claim is black-on-black crime is the result of underinvestment and over-policing. So what would constitute a loss for this claim? A loss would be proving that there may be other factors causing black-on-black crime that she hasn't considered. Her first opponent is Austin. Austin immediately brings up the correlation between absent fatherhood and incarceration, a fact that is also confirmed by Jubilee's fact checkers on the screen, stating not only does absent fatherhood increase the likelihood, but if a parent is incarcerated, children are 5 to 6 times more likely to become offenders. This is also backed by researcher Thomas Sowell, who found in 1960, which is 100 years after the end of slavery, 22% of black kids grew up in homes with only one parent. So 4 out of 5 black children were in homes with both parents. 30 years later, after the leftist policies of welfare incentivizing fathers to not be in the home, that number had more than tripled. Amanda's response is the increase in crime is because the police officers were no longer black, but of a different race, implying that somehow having a white officer in your neighborhood makes you want to shoot another black man. Her initial claim was about black-on-black crime, not police harassment. There's nothing about the presence of a white officer that can make you steal suddenly or kill someone else. Her response didn't even correspond to the claim. This is the point where she gets angry with Austin and begins yelling. She debated 3 more opponents on this subject. She debated Jazz, another guy named Joshua wearing a red hat, and the Joshua she debated about reparations again. I'm not going to go through those 3 people's responses on this claim since she didn't even come close to explaining how a police officer of another race in the community makes you kill one another or steal from one another. Nor did she address who is accountable for this underinvestment that she asserted. Given that she didn't effectively address either one, and even the fact checker backed up Austin, Amanda also lost her second claim. If there's anything that you think Amanda said to either Jazz or either one of the Joshuas that I need to know, let me know in the comments section. Her third claim is systemic racism isn't a theory, it's our lived reality backed by data and history. What would constitute a loss for this claim? Simply defining the word systemic would be helpful to see if what we're living actually fits that definition. I'll come back to this with my own commentary, but for now, that's what I'm listening to from her opponents. On this claim, she debates John Samuel, Isaiah, Ryan, and Jazz again. First up is John Samuel. He hears her out so she can explain what she means by systemic racism. Let me first say here that it was smart of John Samuel to first know what it is that he's debating before he starts building his argument. A lot of people want to debate without first understanding what it is that they're even debating. She compliments him on doing that. As examples, Amanda goes back to explaining redlining and real estate. She said she feels like this because you can see examples of systemic racism in the books, and that's why we've had laws to challenge the racist ones. She said in many instances, these systems have been dismantled in name. We've never dismantled the culture of racism, though, and that's the problem. John Samuel doesn't disagree that racism exists. He actually says he saw that appraisal documentary that she's referring to. However, he still disagrees with racism being systemic. He explains to her the history of where his grandfather grew up. He said it looked like a slave house, he said. He then explains how his grandfather went from that to obtaining the highest ranking there is in the United States Navy, bought his own house in San Diego, passed these things down to him, and now John Samuel is able to get his master's degree and run for Congress. John Samuel is trying to tell her that racism exists in racist people, and there's nothing that you can do about that. It doesn't mean that the system is corrupt, though. Amanda lost on this claim also. And I'll tell you why. And it isn't even about anything that John Samuel actually said. I used Amanda's own words against her. She said racism is systemic. Then she comes right back saying that these systems have been dismantled, but they always come back with something else. And this is a direct quote from Amanda here. She said, "We've never dismantled the culture of racism." That quote gives you an insight into Amanda's mind. To summarize, she thinks the systemic racism exists because we haven't been able to change the mind and culture of racists. Well, that's an impossibility. We live in America. We don't go around crushing people and trying to break their will so that they can think the way we do. In America, you're free to be stupid here and see where it gets you. There is no place on this planet where you can go where there are zero racists. That's the world that we live in. There is no law that you will ever pass to make people love you. What John Samuel is trying to get her to understand is that racists merely existing never stopped his grandfather, nor his father, nor him from achieving. She lost this claim to herself. She's asking an impossibility, and she said so without even realizing it. Her third loss on systemic racism. Her final claim is black conservatism fails to address the needs of the working class. What would constitute a loss for this claim? Well, she's already lost by calling it black conservatism. That label just proves my point about her being unable to function without seeing color. There's no such thing as black conservatism. It's just conservatism. It's a principle. It's not a color. But what would constitute a loss here would be to contrast micromanaged government principles to free market principles. She debates ABL again, Layla and Matt Nuclear again. If you want to tell me in the comments section anything she said against them that was right, go ahead, but I gotta wrap this up. So let me just jump into why this chick lost on this too, because I have to get to my own viewpoints on all of this. Remember the chart that I covered and I said the chart was important? This chart is why black Democrats and black conservatives disagree on topics of race, and it's also why leftists and conservatives of any race disagree. It's because we're operating from two different places. Conservatives are operating from a place of leave me alone, let me be free. Democrats operate from a place of more and more government. They always want the government to intervene, even if they shouldn't intervene. Let me give you an example, because I haven't fully explained why Amanda lost on this one too. One of the policies I disagree with my Democrat friends over is the minimum wage. Let Democrats tell it, every law in favor of the minimum wage is a win for the working class, and that's a flat out lie, and I'll prove it. When a brand new electronic device comes on the market, is it typically priced high or is it priced low? The answer is it's priced high. The manufacturer really isn't sure what the public is willing to pay yet, so they start off high. Eventually you see the price of that product coming down. Well, when that product is priced too high, are the masses able to buy it or just a few? The answer is a few, because everyone can't afford a 55-inch television for $1,500. Let's pause on that, because there's an economic lesson here. The lesson is when a product or service is priced high, it's out of reach for most of the market. That's what we just said. Well, if that's true, is labor and service a product of sorts? Yes, it is. Does the same rule apply that a price on labor may mean that some people are out of reach for the masses of employers? Yes, the rule still applies. Do you remember the crash of 2008? The crash was so bad that educated people with degrees and resumes were delivering pizzas and working at McDonald's. Do you remember this? The highest unemployment rate from that era came in October of 2009. It was 10%. That's higher than the 9.1% inflation rate that we just came out of with Joe Biden, right? But now watch this. For those of you who like to use AI, ask AI what the teenage unemployment rate was for that exact same period. Do you know what it was? The teenage unemployment rate for teenagers ages 16 through 19 was 27.6%. Darn, that's nearly 3 times the national unemployment rate. But the question is why? Because when you raise the minimum wage by force, employers are also forced to make a decision. If I have to pay that much, I may as well hire someone who's educated and trained. I don't want an uneducated person who I have to also train while paying them $15 an hour, let's say. So some employers hire these professionals who are looking to work, and they did not hire the uneducated, those in need of skills, because the Democrat policies of the minimum wage price those kids out of the market. I went all the way around the world to tell you conservative policies do address the needs of the working class. The 2008 crash is proof. If America would adopt conservative principles where government stayed out of wage decisions, more and more of the uneducated and poor would be working. It's so-called radical policies like Amanda's that make the working class struggle. In closing, since I wasn't on the show, here are my thoughts on other things that were discussed on the show. Have you ever thought about the fact that if a policeman pulled you over for speeding and gave you a ticket, you could ignore the ticket and throw it in the trash if it weren't for one thing: the law? Have you ever thought about that? It's the law that makes things enforceable. And we already told you that there's one party that's not inclined to pushing more government and another party that's always pushing for more government. Well, the same thing applied to slavery. I just told you that slavery wasn't legal in the United States. It was just neutral. In the beginning, it was do whatever you want. Guess which party passed a law to make slavery legal? You guessed it, the pro-government party, Democrats. You can look this up if you want to, but in 1854, Democrats passed the Kansas-Nebraska Act, which was single-handedly responsible for encouraging the spread of slavery throughout the entire United States. Keep in mind, there was no Republican Party at the time of its passing. The Republican Party was founded in response to the Kansas-Nebraska Act to combat slavery. One of the items left out of Amanda's viewpoints was the cost of her policies. Thomas Sowell is famous for saying there are three arguments that the left can't stand up to. Compared to what? At what cost? And what are the hard facts? When she mentioned remunerations and intellectual property, it dawned on me she probably doesn't have a clue what something like this would cost taxpayers. Who does the research to determine the number of slave descendants? Who pays them for their research and how much does that cost? Who kept up the records of every bit of labor that the slaves did so that remunerations could be paid to those descendants? And what is the cost of that in today's dollars? How do we effectively know and take the word for who created what inventions back then? And how do you retroactively give said descendants a continual share in an intellectual property when shares of a company have already been allocated? I mean, let's pretend a slave invented the light bulb. First off, how do you prove all of the conversations that occurred back then in order to validate that it was that person's invention? Now ask yourself the question, what is the proper remuneration for descendants who haven't received income from the light bulb since its invention in 1879? That's 146 years of the entire world using your invention. What do you think they'd owe you? How would that affect the percentages of ownership held by all of the current companies that provide lighting? Out of curiosity, I wanted to know, out of all of this talk about reparations, what is the closest that Democrats have come to implementing it? And what were the estimated costs? Grok responded with this: while the federal efforts like H.R. 40 have come closest to a vote under Democratic control, state and local initiatives show more tangible progress with costs ranging anywhere from $25,000 per person in Evanston to trillions nationally or hundreds of billions nationwide. It doesn't take a genius to calculate this is easily hundreds of billions to trillions of dollars for something where her first claims were smacked down by the very first conservative she sat in front of. This shouldn't be a surprise, though. I already did a show discussing the left's failed war on poverty. America has spent over $23 trillion since 1964 to reduce a poverty rate that was already going down by 46% before Democrats fixed it. Finally, the irony of black Democrats and black radicals, by the way, is that all of the racism that they want to stamp out, all of the white supremacy that they're concerned about, all of the reparations that they want from all of us was due to their own racist policies as socialists. Democrats are the party of the Kansas-Nebraska Act. Republicans didn't even exist yet. Our party was formed in response to the Act of 1854. Democrats are the party of Jim Crow, the party of the KKK. If you really wanted to get down to who is responsible for all of this oppression, they're afraid that you'd find out that America was not the problem. The problem was and continues to be the Democrat Party. It's such a weird turn of events to watch the perpetrator pretend to be the hero in all of this stuff. Democrats use victimhood as the weapon to paint America as an awful country when our country itself didn't deserve it. Amanda mentioned 400 years of slavery. Has anyone ever stopped to remember that next year America will be 250 years old? Let that sink in. Would you blame your 5-year-old for something that happened 10 years ago? That wouldn't make sense, would it? That's impossible. Additionally, Republicans abolished slavery in 1865, so deduct that from 2026 too. Even if you're one of these people who believed in the 1619 scam, how do you come up with 400 years? Is there any one of you watching this right now who was a slave in 2019? I'm not trying to minimize the impact of slavery. I'm merely pointing out what Democrats are doing. They're elongating the legacy of slavery to milk it as long as they can. It's no different than the racial ambulance chasers like Al Sharpton or Ben Crump. I have an idea. Maybe reparations should be paid by the party who thought all of these ideas were a good idea. That would isolate it more to the Democrat Party. And the next time Kamala Harris wants to spend $1.5 billion in 15 weeks, we can just divvy it up with the people who their policies hurt. Hey, I like that idea. This way, the people who like those policies get to pay for them, and the people who didn't like the policies don't have to pay. If you made it this far, like this video, friend me, or subscribe. Definitely share this video and ask for notifications the next time we release a new video. On Facebook and X, you'll find me as Rob the Speaker, and on YouTube and Rumble, you can find me as The Rob Lett Show. I'll see you on the next one. Cheers to your freedom.